Hi, my name's Mandy Chapman and I work for HRCubed. I'd like to start by talking about the things that hold us back as women in the workplace. To do this, I've spoken to the inspirational women in my life and I've thought about the women that I've observed in my career in business improvement. There are three key themes that I've found that come up again and again. These are guilt, self-doubt, and perhaps trying to be more like men. Before I discuss these three themes, I'll give you a little bit of my background. I grew up in a tenement in Glasgow in Scotland. My mum stayed at home when we were little. She cooked, she cleaned, she hugged, she nurtured. She was always there to drop us off and pick us up from school every day. She herself had had a hard childhood growing up in a working class suburb of Glasgow. Taking on the mother role somewhat to her 5 siblings, she grafted her whole life. When I was 10, she decided to go back to school herself. Having left school early, she decided that she now wanted a career. She needed something more. She went back to school and got her O-levels and then her A-levels, and then she went on to university and became a teacher. Over the years, she also received her Masters in Education, her Masters in Philosophy, and then went on to study towards her PhD. Over this time, she also became head teacher of her school, as well as continuing to manage us through childhood and teenagerhood, as well as most of the time fostering 1 or 2 foster children. She and my dad fostered lots of children. She must have been exhausted. But I never thought of her as a working mum. She continued to be there when we needed her, and I've taken great inspiration from my mum. And I think it's from her that I get my hard work ethic. I have vague memories of her working until 2, 3, 4 in the morning to finish an AC or a dissertation. I wonder how she felt. Was she exhausted? Did she feel guilt or self-doubt? Now, I'm a working mother of 3 small children, and although I don't have space in my life right now for foster children or lots of additional higher education, I have spent lots of my life feeling guilty. Guilt. The feeling of going to work and not being there for your child, not being able to pick them up from school. The feeling of guilt can be all-consuming. It can fester away at you, and it's a real pain in the pit of your stomach. Guilt for not making it to the Muffins for Mums event on Mother's Day. Guilt for forgetting to rebook football club. Guilt for being at work when they come home from school. Guilt for not getting the time to do home learning. Something I'm frankly totally terrible at. But then, on the flip side, there's work guilt. Guilt for working flexibly and not giving 5 days a week to my job. Guilt for picking my kids up early when I've been working 12-hour days. That feeling of shortchanging work and shortchanging family has always been something I've struggled with. But I have learned in recent years that we shouldn't apologise for having a family or for having hobbies or a life outside work. I heard someone recently say that your organisation and your job will not be loyal to you, but your work will. If you love your work, be loyal to that. If you have hobbies that you love, be loyal to them. Give them your time. And you can be loyal to all of these things at the same time. If you have family and friends who need you, commit to them. This doesn't mean you're a terrible employee. It means that you are human and work doesn't come first. Being fulfilled intellectually can make us better people, better mothers. It certainly does for me. Being fulfilled as people with lives outside work, having good mental health, makes me better and more engaged at work. I am very lucky to be in a company that gives me flexibility, that has given me the opportunities and that has recognised my value. It has helped me to become the person I am today by trusting me and giving me the autonomy to make decisions and mistakes and to pick myself up and keep going. Which brings me on to the second key theme, self-doubt. Making mistakes has always been something to avoid for me anyway. In recent years, I've learned that this is very wrong. We're all human, we all make mistakes, and we hopefully learn from them, which makes us better. I will confess now, I often still feel Like a little girl, inside I'm still that 9-year-old girl, unsure of myself, letting my mum pull my bunches inexplicably tightly, worried about making a mistake or taking something on that is just too big for me. And I think a lot of people feel like that. In fact, I spoke to the wife of a very senior figure in business recently, and she told me that her husband can be consumed with self-doubt. She said that he was invited to a very prestigious dinner in London, and when he looked at the table plan, he couldn't find his name. So instead of making a fuss, he went back to his room and ordered room service, too embarrassed to raise the issue, afraid that the mistake was his and that he wasn't invited after all. It turns out, of course, that the table plan was wrong. As women especially, though, we typically feel uncomfortable tooting our own horns. We have a tendency to undervalue ourselves, to be self-conscious, and this often manifests itself in not having those tough salary negotiations, not putting a value on what we provide to an organisation. And we must start to do this. Women are courageous, hardworking and passionate. We need to be confident in our own abilities. But we need to balance confidence. The balance of having confidence without being arrogant. Being humble without insecurity. And I've often struggled with this throughout my career. Are people going to see through me and expose me for being the fraud that I must be? A working class girl from Clydebank who has no right to be talking to you, no right to be sitting at the exec table, no right to be making recommendations to businesses on how they could improve themselves. This has been something that I've had to overcome over my 18 years in business. So, instead of picturing the room full of male execs, why not, definitely don't picture them naked, but why not try picturing them like 9-year-olds? Maybe they feel like goofballs with glasses falling off their faces. Or maybe that 9-year-old girl with bunches pulled inexplicably tightly. Know your worth, toot your own horn. And this brings me on to my third point. Are we trying to be more like men? I've seen a number of women in the workplace who seem to be trying to fit into a male-dominated environment by seemingly, to me, being more like men, perhaps being more aggressive, less empathetic, more ruthless. But paradoxically, businesses with a diverse workforce perform better. This is a well-accepted fact. What women bring to business, and especially senior positions, is very different generally to what men bring. I spoke to a good friend of mine recently who is a geneticist and mother of 3, and she put it like this. Women are chatty, sociable, supportive creatures. We naturally self-reflect. And that ability to self-reflect and as well as having peer support allows us to continuously improve. And this is something that women in communities have been doing for millennia around the world. Empathy, kindness and compassion are business critical skills that we need in leadership positions and that women have in bucket loads. So give yourself a break. The additional people skills that women bring to the workplace are critical to the success of a business. I recently heard the founder of Timson's, John Timson, on the radio talking about his £160 million business and how it was his wife who injected kindness into the firm. If I can quote him, he said he realised that his business could be kind and still make money. Kindness and empathy is strong in women, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is weak in men, but I do think that women add a certain humanity to business situations. I see often people in business forgetting about kindness. I'm lucky to have been given the opportunity a couple of years ago to set up a new arm of my business. This, like many other organisations, is fairly male-dominated at the top. I now sit on an executive committee with 1 other woman in a group of 7. It's been encouraging that I've been given this opportunity, despite myself having 2 periods of maternity leave and despite working flexibly. This is terribly important for me, things like having my mummy day off on a Friday, and I think business have an obligation to promote on merit, effort, dedication, but perhaps also on kindness. Would you want someone who's unkind on your leadership team? So, in summary, life for me is like a very good hill walk. Plenty of ups and downs, false summits, uphill battles, challenges, beauty, pain, joy, exhaustion. And I do believe that life is not about the pursuit of happiness, because things will come along that aren't happy, but it's about how we conduct ourselves at the best and worst of times. So give yourself a break, acknowledge the feelings of guilt, and then go beyond them. Trust in your abilities and be yourself. Thank you.